Most of the archaeological excavations in Europe relate, of course, to former European cultures or former Western cultures. A large portion of history pertains to discoveries about ancient Greece, the Roman Empire, the Celts, or the Egyptians. However, some lesser-known discoveries point to how China developed into a paradise for treasure hunters, archaeologists, and historians in more recent years. Chinese history is as extensive as many other civilizations that can be found all across Europe. Though China has been researched far less than many other countries. Regardless of this, breathtaking discoveries are made time and again in the Far East, which helps experts to understand the history a little better and how two world empires developed around the same time in completely different parts of the world. Today, we'd like to take a look into 10 secrets of ancient China that have remained hidden for many years. Let us know, what do you find most intriguing about China and its history? If there's anything you'd like to see covered in a future video, let us know in the comments. The hidden crown in the mountains. Chinese history is characterized, above all, by the fact that the many different dynasties and empires sometimes only existed for a very short time, and the many different regions of the massive country were sometimes forgotten as quickly as they appeared. An example of this is a forgotten crown, or rather, a forgotten tomb, on the Qinghai Tibet Plateau. A grave was found in the middle of the mountains that has now been traced back to the first royal dynasty of Tibet. The peculiarity of this grave was not only that it had been built in such a forgotten location, but also the contents of the grave. Various objects were found scattered all around the grave, including a chest that was incredibly ornate and covered in priceless artwork that had been forgotten for centuries. This suggests that the owner of the tomb was likely a member of the royal family. The grave items and documents contained therein are incredibly important to Chinese history and are very important to understanding the first dynasty of this forgotten empire. The impact of this dynasty still plays an important role in Chinese history centuries later, and the tomb is believed to be from AD 800. The historic shipwreck of Guangdong. In the modern version of China, underwater archaeology plays an important role in understanding the history of the country and how it became what we know it as today. On one hand, this is due to the fact that many archaeological sites can be found hidden deep underwater, and on the other hand, because the famous Silk Road partially ran through water, leaving behind relics and artifacts from a forgotten time. This is also the case with a shipwreck that was found in the western part of the once famous trade route. The ship that was found on the bottom of the ocean here is an excellent example of the architecture of the time in China. While it was relatively easy to salvage, the contents of the ship were even more interesting. Ornate goods made of Chinese porcelain and coins made of various precious metals from many different regions indicate that the items within the ship were particularly valuable and may have been priceless at the time. With discoveries like this becoming more and more common, it's no wonder why the country is so interested in searching the depths of the nearby waters for sunken treasure. The pyramids in China. The pyramids of China have long been the focus of research in the country. This has a lot to do with the fact that they emerged in different parts of the world every few hundred years without any sign of contact between civilizations. For example, the pyramids in China bear a striking resemblance to the pyramids that can be found in Egypt, South America, and many different continents across the globe. However, all those years ago, it would have been virtually impossible for these civilizations to have shared building plans and knowledge across such a great distance. In China, as well as in South America and Egypt, there are some structures that either have the shape of pyramids or are legitimate pyramids. In Chinese history, they're often determined to be the tombs of great rulers, and some are believed to be connected with narrow labyrinths in between them that have been buried deep underground. The big question to this day is whether the pyramids in China were created through knowledge from Egypt, or whether the ancient Chinese discovered this design independently on their own. At the moment, we really don't know, but researchers hope to get to the bottom of this phenomenon very soon. Prehistoric planned city. The excavation at the Pingliang Tai site is interesting to historians for many reasons. On the one hand, it's a prehistoric city. It's said to be several thousand years old and is comparatively well preserved to this day. What the ruins mainly show, however, is an intelligently designed complex and undeniable evidence that the ancient Chinese people thought carefully about how to lay out their city even all those years ago. For example, there's a road through the main axis of the city that connects many different important areas. The buildings are specifically arranged in the inner area, with a large wall providing protection against animals or possible invaders. In addition to this, the excavations have shown that the city must have had a lively trade deal with other parts of China. Findings suggest that there was trading conducted with other prehistoric cities, but why the city was abandoned at some point remains unknown. We also have no idea what happened to the residents or where they may have gone. The cave of the first Chinese people. It's still a mystery how people spread around the Earth many years ago. We know that the majority of humans would have initially lived in Africa, then spread out among the continents. But when did humans first arrive in China? Discoveries in a cave, Guangdong, may now help to explain how this would have happened. Human fossils have been found, as have other tools that point back to the earliest forms of humanity. The oldest objects are believed to be up to 30,000 years old. This makes it virtually impossible that, at this point in history, humans had already spread out around the world. Instead, it's likely that this transitional process was still taking place around the time that this cave would have been used as a shelter. There's also the theory that Homo sapiens developed into modern humans in this area, with other parts of the world following suit soon after. The findings are still being investigated, and attempts are being made to link them to the findings from Europe and other parts of the world. We don't know too much just yet, but it's possible that these details could help explain how humans eventually scattered themselves around the world. The first imperial city in China. The emperors of the Chinese regions were known not just for building palaces, but for building entire cities to fulfill their own desires. Huangchengtai seems to be one of the first examples of this. However, new excavations at the facility also call into question the knowledge about the development of Chinese culture in general, not only in this particular area. Complex structures, security systems, pieces of jewelry, and decorations indicate that the craftsmen at this time were already much further along in human development than was previously assumed. The imperial city is said to be around 4,000 years old and would therefore have been built at the same time as the Egyptians celebrated their first advanced civilizations. So it could be that, without knowing each other, several world cultures were developed on Earth at the same time. But how is it possible that all of these civilizations began to develop an advanced understanding of the world around them, all at the exact same time? How jade impacted China's history. Jade is a beautiful gem and raw material that's directly linked to Chinese history. Even today, jewelry that's made with jade is incredibly valuable and can seek thousands of dollars on an open market. However, most importantly, jade is believed to have played an important role in understanding the history of China. For example, what's believed to be the first jade mine in world history was found recently and is believed to have been built around 1,500 years before Christ's birth, a time when jade production would have increased dramatically. At the same time, jade artifacts that could be up to 15,000 years old were found in several tombs from the early days of China. Jade is, therefore, directly connected to the emergence of China and the rise to world power. The peak of jade production was reached at the time of the Silk Road, when the jade was brought to Europe by Western traders and sold for incredibly high prices. The last remnants of the Han Dynasty. Although the Han Dynasty may have played an important role in the development of China, only a few relics from this time period exist today. Researchers assume that the following dynasties wanted to erase all traces of the former rulers, and that there are, therefore, only a few relics left behind from these eras. However, researchers have now discovered a former city that would have belonged to one of China's many rulers. The Shichengji archaeological site was probably used as both a city and a large fortress, which would have been used as a major hub for one of the former Chinese dynasties. It was built about 200 years before Christ's birth and is likely to have seen its downfall with the rest of the dynasty around the year 200 AD. There are only a few remaining artifacts of the city, but excavations have just begun, and researchers are hopeful that they'll be able to provide new insight into how the military was structured all those years ago and how the former emperor managed to maintain his huge empire. Noble grave from the first spring and autumn ages. The age of spring and autumn describes a time in early Chinese history that most likely spanned from 770 to 446 BC. It was the time of the Zheng dynasty. For a long time, hardly any artifacts from this period were found until an extensive burial site of some nobles from this period was finally located. The discoveries from this tomb include jewelry, documents, drawings, and treasures that are important for exploring the culture and significance of this period in Chinese history. After excavating the tomb in its entirety, it became clear that it was one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in the southern part of China. Once researchers have finally explored all of the artifacts, we may find new insight into a time in China's history of which we know virtually nothing about. The secret tomb of the first Chinese emperor. Emperor Qin Shi Huang was probably the first person to call himself the God of China and to unite a significant portion of Chinese territory under his rule. The emperor waged countless wars to unite the various tribes and left behind a legacy that is still often spoken of to this day. As you may expect, from a man with such a colorful history, he too would soon have a monumental tomb that's still a mystery to many archaeologists today. In fact, his grave is more of a city than a tomb and is far different from the many other Chinese rulers. The well-known terracotta army can be found here, and various artifacts of ancient Chinese history have been located in this so-called tomb. The area extends several kilometers, but the actual grave of the emperor has not yet been touched. This is because the underground complex is too large, even for today's technology, and most of the discoveries are still being unearthed after many years of dirt and debris have concealed them from human sight. In addition to this, there are still active traps and protective measures that the excavators have to be incredibly careful of. If they make the wrong move, it could mean the destruction of priceless artifacts, or worse, a tragic loss of life. The ancient Chinese did not take kindly to grave robbers and implemented many safety measures to ensure that the graves of their deceased would remain untouched forever. As you can tell, many of the discoveries from ancient China have proven to be incredibly important in modern history. What other discoveries did we miss in this video? What topics would you like to see us discuss next? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that like button and ring the notification bell for more videos.